Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who kept us going for over 400 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. Dude of the week is Queasy Jam. Thank you, Queasy Jam. It's a good name. It's a good name.
It's a good name, but it's a name that makes me feel uncomfortable for some reason.
A little bit queasy, maybe. I don't know. I love a good.
I mean, you put an F in there, and it just gives a whole new meaning.
Ooh. Okay. Oh. Yeah, hey, head over to the Patreon if you want to get side quest content.
Oh man, I've ruined Andrew now. I broke him.
That's where we have those conversations. I don't even remember. We've talked about all sorts of weird shit.
Yes. Yeah, if you want to, YoVideogames.com, or I'm sorry, patreon.com/YoVideogames podcast. If you want to head over and be a producer or just a contributor at any level, get all access to all our side quests. We've got dozens of them.
55
plus.
Of them now. Yeah.
55. Yeah. All kinds of exclusive content.
But I'll tell you what, we held off on recording for a day so that we could see the Final Fantasy content, the EVO announcements.
Yeah.
Did not disappoint. I liked the demo a lot. I will say one thing to kick it off. If you want to talk demo first, or you want to talk EVO first, we should probably talk EVO first, I guess.
Doesn't matter, I guess.
Well, I'm just gonna say this about the demo and the presentation. I got this weird feeling like it's robust. Like that's what it's like. It looks so packed. It's jam packed with stuff, and it made me feel bad about Final Fantasy 16. I like.
Boy, wait till you play the final game, because I'm allowed to say this now. There was an event a couple weeks ago, where I got to go, where Max and we got to go and play a build of Rebirth. It's a build that was part of this demo, is that build, but we got to play a huge chunk of thing not in this demo, and not it's not the coming part either, because like this is the demo is really bizarre, because like, okay, here's the demo and it's going to get an update in 2 weeks, where they're going to add a open world thing, which is the first demo Max and I played, which is kind of like the TGS demo, which is a tiny little sliver of an area, of an open area, to just give you the sort of like generalist taste of what it's like to sort of roam around. Because it's like, here's the thing, I played the June demo that's forthcoming in a couple weeks. I played that a few months ago, and then what I played a couple weeks ago, which was most of the entirety of chapter 2, is it's funny because like we got the June on. I played that first one, so a lot of people are going to play this as their first thing, and it was a really good taste because it really was like, okay, cool. It really
they've expanded.
I want to say assuaged the fears I had of how the open world was going to feel and be treated, because I had this crushing fear before we really got into much of Rebirth, that Rebirth was going to be what I would call a Disneyland ride, or a guided experience, a haunted house maze, if you will, where you're walking through these very pretty but very carefully built up little zones that you kind of you basically, what you're able to physically run on is a trail.
Right.
And you have some cool vistas on these trails, and then you have like your Unreal loading, squeezing through, nooks and crannies moments. And I was afraid that basically the design philosophy of Remake was going to be in Rebirth. They're like, it'll be a little bit more. No. But here's the thing, it's not that at all. It's not that at all. The June demo will give you a tiny taste. You'll be like, wow, it's pretty cool. You have so much freedom. And it's like, oh, well, but wait, when you actually get to the main game, where you actually, the first actual open area in the game, which actually is a little bit of ways into the game, then you'll really see, oh shit, this is Horizon.
It's going to be like Horizon open.
Yeah, almost
Okay.
just about. But the design's a little different because Horizon is very much like a really flat, wide open expanse, right?
Mm-hmm.
This game is a little bit more. They kind of try to like make each little nook and cranny kind of unique, and I think that's done for artistic reasons. But I truly think this game is pulling some smoke and mirrors a bit because it's running on Unreal 4, and Unreal 4 is notoriously not good for open world. So they put a lot of just natural formations and structures kind of like in front of you and around you, and you climb over them, but I think they're doing it to sort of stream in
Oh, like a built-in segmentation.
right, yeah. So they're doing like kind of like these things to like try to not like choke the life out of the Unreal 4 engine. But what it does lead to is it feels like they were able to more handcraft a lot of little like more of the world because of it, because they had to really sit there and think about, okay, what does each little segmented area look like? What does it have? It actually feels more crafted because Horizon is doing what it does well, which is here's the West Coast, post-apocalyptic, overgrown everything, and then there's robot dinosaurs roaming around. And it
Right.
does that well. This game is still trying to be Final Fantasy 7 specifically in a way. So you're going to see a lot of very weird Final Fantasy 7 looking things all around. But yeah, it feels a little more like a little closer zoomed in. The camera work feels somewhere between like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon a bit. Like
Yeah, it's
just sort of like
definitely it feels closer in than you maybe want for an action game, but actually I found once because when I was watching the presentation, I was like, it's so close in, but then
it
it's
is,
it's
yeah.
actually much less like it's further back than I think God of War is.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
it's like
God of
this
War
in between.
feels when you're close in God of War, it doesn't necessarily feel slow, but I bet you if you pulled it back a little bit, the entire game would feel way slower.
Maybe.
If that makes sense.
Um,
Like
But
you can't compensate.
and God of War has this thing where it's still kind of annoying to deal with people throwing projectiles behind you. They have that little ring, sort of like radius ring around Kratos. So
Right.
sort of maybe something's there, but it's like, man, you have to like you're already dealing with all this stuff visually in front of you. Then you have to like constantly like babysit the proximity danger ring around him to like roll out of the way. I don't think God of War's battle system works flawlessly. Let's just say that. I think it works very well, but it's like, I don't think it would have really killed the game to pull out a little more. You know,
I think if they would have pulled back, it would have looked tremendously slow.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that was like a design choice or if they were compensating or whatever. I think it looks great, so I like being in closer. But I do think it's much slower than like Final Fantasy is going to be. Final Fantasy feels faster. Did you play it in
Yeah.
performance mode? You played it in performance mode. I might
Performance
be
mode.
fucking
Oh
up.
yeah, yeah. I was walking around. I'm like, yeah, look at. Wait a minute. Like about 30 seconds in, I was like, wait a minute. Hold up.
I
It's-
I switched back and forth a couple of times, and to be honest, I never really felt like the quality mode was slowing down. Like it didn't like chug anywhere that I
yeah, I
saw.
mean, you definitely see the resolution take a hit
Yeah,
when you go into resolution mode or performance. When you go into performance, yeah, the resolution kind of drops. It just, but the early version I played of this game, oh my god, like it was the performance mode was smeary. Like
really.
it was a bit like the early build we played was like we put in performance mode and they pretty much said please do not capture in performance mode. Um So they wanted us to play the whole early demo in because even though it was only a few months ago, the build from it was way older than even that,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So like anyway, so we put in performance mode on the old build we played. Oh man, oh boy. I don't know if it even hit 1080p. I don't think it did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder if quality mode is going to be what everybody plays it in, just because most people are going to play it on a TV, not a gaming monitor.
Yeah, and that's the default, and that's what most people are going to see. And I think the thing is like if you're not a stickler like me for like timing and just whatever, you probably will be fine. I mean, again, I have not played this game in graphics mode at all, so I
It's
actually
fucking
don't
gorgeous.
know. I actually don't. I mean, I think it looks good anyways. Personally, like I think it looks plenty good in performance. However, if we're being fair, and we're way more we're cynical about this stuff usually, it doesn't look as good as Horizon or like Avatar. It doesn't look at it, so it's not like the best looking game you've ever seen or anything like that. Like
No,
it,
yeah.
it's not that it's not that graphically amazing. And part of me is kind of like, this is to me, I'm like, this is a little bit of the fact that I'm like, it is Unreal 4, not even Unreal 5. It is Unreal 4, and it's being worked off of the original work they did on Remake. And Horizon, uses the Decima engine, which that whole studio made for themselves. The exact same deal with the Avatar game. With these are homegrown studio engines that they've built up for years to optimize the living shit out of them. And this is Unreal. And Max said it too, because he played it like he got this. He noticed this during our hands on a couple weeks ago, and you can see yourself in this demo, and I pointed it out. The foliage, sorry, doesn't move. Like grass, bushes, they have no interactivity. They don't move in the wind. They don't move when you walk through them. They're just static. They're just there. They're invisible.
You know what? I didn't even notice.
I don't think a lot of people will. Max noticed it, and I was like, I was kind of noticing it, but I wasn't paying attention. He said it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? He's right. They don't move.
Well, he did a lot of environment art, and granted, it was for more like a Flash game that he
Mhm.
was doing it on when I knew him, working at the game company that we were at. But um, game company, I don't want to paint it like we were at some like fancy game company. I just don't know if he wants me to say where he used to work, um, but yeah, no, I mean, maybe he just pays more attention to environment than I do.
I
I
mean, it's definitely something I kind of noticed, but I wasn't really sure. And then I was like, yeah, no, they don't move. Like
Because they
grass is just
animated the hell out of like the hair moving and
yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that.
And people have pointed out there was an old trailer for the game where it did. And then all the recent builds of this game down. People are like, well, hopefully in the final. I'm like, no, I played something that was pretty much near final.
It must have caused like really massive chugging or
100%. I'm like, and I've had the devs even chime in and say like, yeah, that's a massive tax, especially like with the way Unreal does stuff.
hmm.
So I'm like, they're like, yeah, this probably got axed in the name of gameplay performance.
I also don't remember like I remember some key details from like the original 97 version. I'm not gonna like rewatch a bunch of story stuff to get a
Mhm.
refresher on it necessarily. Um but Sephiroth is significantly bigger than everyone around him, right? Like
Taller, yeah,
not just taller, he's like bigger. Like he's just
it's the
bigger.
coat. It's the coat.
Yeah. And I don't remember that being a thing in the original. I mean, it makes sense with the story that they want to make it look
He's
a little bit
he's he's definitely taller, but you got to remember a lot of the time that we're talking about like little like what I used to
chibi.
call little Popeye characters, because they would have like the big squares for their arm, and then like the dot, and then like
Yeah.
hand dot, like a big square for the rest of their arm. So they had like this sort of like Popeye arm thing
Yeah.
going in the original game. So I'm kind of like, yeah, none of them ever looked. It was really hard to get a gauge on anatomy. I mean, there is the moment you play in the demo is in the original game,
Yeah. Well,
and
it's much smaller in the original game.
but yeah, I think they're definitely playing up like Sephiroth's like lording over people a
Yeah.
lot here.
Well, his descent into madness is much better drawn out here than it is in the original too. Because in the
Yeah.
original, you just get a snapshot of like, and then he lost it, and you're like, oh, okay. Here they're actually like, and here's why he lost it, and you're like, oh, okay. Like it happens over 7 days here. I don't think it happens over 7 days in the original. It's just like right then and there.
Yeah, like
Um,
you see like the thing of him, like he goes down in the basement and he reads a bunch of books, but it's just like him, like this really quick montage of him walking back and forth like reading a book.
right.
Um, yeah, it's played out like you expect it, but it is more expanded upon. It helps a little bit. I still Here's where the thing is. Here's where I make everyone mad. I don't think Sephiroth has ever been that great of a villain. He just
No.
he just looks cool. He makes a lot of weeby girls wet and a lot
Yeah.
of gay men wet.
Well,
Um,
I mean, all of Final Fantasy is super anime. Like a lot of it is, and
yeah, it
he's
is,
the most anime.
and he's always looked like some sort of industrial goth male stripper. He always has. He still does.
Hell yeah.
And I mean, like the whole even in the trailer where he's just like really like, oh, embrace me, Cloud. I'm like, yeah, this possibly won't go. But anyways, it's not just because he's designed and he's sexy that makes him bad. I'm saying I don't think his descent into madness is really that big a deal. Like, or the reason he goes crazy to me was like, so what? Like,
Yeah, it's very like it's a shruggable moment where you're just like, okay.
I
Like,
was created. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like he already didn't like Hojo. He already thought Hojo was a piece of shit. And the
right.
demo in the new game kind of goes out of his way. Like he's aware of him. He doesn't like him. He doesn't think highly of him. And it's like, oh, did you know he made you in a test tube? I'm like, okay. It's kind of like,
I came out of someone's balls, bro.
I
That's
mean,
so
yeah,
much
dude. Like,
worse.
just think of like everyone's birth is gross when you really think about it.
It's
Like,
all just so
just picture
traumatic.
your father, picture his nut sack, and that's where you were. You were a little microscopic organism in your father's nut sack, and he fucking nutted it right into your mother. And
And
9 months later, you were born. Everyone's birth is gross. Like,
your birth was to the sound of squelching. Um,
and
uh,
and weird '70s music, Afternoon Delight or something.
God, I hope it was something as cool as that. Um, I do have like some weird story questions that I just can't remember if they went into this in the original. Maybe I'm misremembering after 27 years or whatever. Um, Number one, why would you why wouldn't you just tell him his mom's name was like, I don't know, Mary?
Yeah.
Like, why would you tell him like, oh yeah, it's Genova? I hope he never goes to our top secret
That
lab.
was
Like,
actually
what?
interesting. My mother's name was Genova. I'm like, wait, I was a little thrown off initially when he first said that there, but yeah, it does beg the question: why would Hojo or anyone in Shinra tell him his mother's name was the same name as this, of what the
Yeah,
actual alien creature they spliced his DNA with to make him like.
sure ain't a common name, you know.
Right, yeah. That is a little funny where it's just kind of like, why would you even tell him that? Why wouldn't you just tell him, hey, your mother's name was Mary?
Maybe you're a nut job and you get a kick out of it, but like, then why would you send him on a mission to the place?
The only thing I can think of is that like Hojo always pictured and imagined he would be a loyal Shinra lapdog, like he was a controlled pet or something. Because I guess that's just the way Hojo might think.
Oh,
Like, oh, we're always going to have full control over him or something. But
yeah, we're getting a picture that Hojo's a real idiot. He's real dumb.
I mean, he's
Uh,
supposed to be creepy and gross. He's basically like Jeffrey Combs in a nutshell.
okay.
His characters in those movies, like he's basically that, but
Uh,
it is kind of stupid when you kind of sit there and think about it a little bit. Like, yeah, so why would he tell him this?
Yeah, I like to think of it as light bulb moments where, like, in the moment you're all like, "Oh, okay," but later on you sit there and you're like, "Ding! Wait a second, what the fuck?" Um, so I don't mind it. I'm not trying to like take away from the story. It's just like weird, fun questions. The other thing is, I think they're exploring the whole. Well, I don't know if this is a spoiler for people who didn't play the original. So I guess we're just not gonna. Cloud's memories, like
Our Zach's memories.
yeah, right. Like the whole like I think they're doing better in this than I remember them doing in the
Mhm.
original for like laying the little seeds about what that twist is going to be.
Yeah.
Um but I sort of don't understand how Tifa would not pick up very quickly that like well you weren't there. Like,
Yeah. Well, there is like a story explanation for why, she is sort of she's like got basically like misremembering it a bit, but it will be interesting. I don't know if they're going to get to that in this game though. Actually the really interesting part about it. Are we going to get that far where we start getting in where like we go back to Nibelheim and they've rebuilt the town and it's full of like all these like Shinra like employees basically pretending to be a town, like the Pleasantville kind of like the weirdness of that. I don't know. Are we going to get that far in this one? I don't know.
yeah, I don't remember because the original one I feel like it was like 70 to 100 hours long. It was super long, and this one's only going to be like 50 from what I've seen online. Like people saying it's going to be like a 50-hour game. Granted, I don't know if they're considering how much. Like I spent 50 hours in the Golden Saucer, like doing.
Right. Well,
Like,
they
I don't know.
straight up said this is going to end at the end of disc 1, where disc 1 ended.
Well, then I don't think we're going to get that far.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely not getting into the whole thing where Cloud falls into the Mako stream and he basically like goes brain dead and Tifa has to go and like into his mind escape and get his memories back or get him out of it. That's not happening in this one.
Yeah, because I don't think Cloud finds out until the second disc.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he doesn't find out about the stuff with Zack or anything like that. Yeah. Until second or third disc. So,
Yeah, and I don't understand. Like there's also now the dating sim where it's all like, I mean, obviously you're gonna pick Tifa. Come on now.
well, it's funny how they've expanded it a lot in this game where now you can go on a date with technically anyone.
Anyone, yeah.
And there is like a whole, you'll see it like, like there's a whole, so and so will remember this.
Right.
There is like an actual chart now. And apparently they say there's going to be more to it than just the Golden Saucer dating moment. There will be other things.
So weird thing, is it Yuffie like 16?
Yeah.
Okay. That seems how old's Cloud? Like 25 in
20,
this?
21.
21. And okay, well, I guess that's not as weird. I was thinking the Cloud was like 25 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, either way,
It's still a little it's a little weird.
Well,
It's a little uncomfortable.
number one, Japan.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Number two, you have to admit though too, like with all of their marketing, they have never once brought up like or shown, oh, you go on a date with Yuffie. It's always been about Tifa, Aerith, or Barrett.
No, that's true. And also, we don't know if Yuffie's been aged up for
She
version,
hasn't. No, because there was that intergrade one they had for a remake on PS5. But no,
and
it's
they bring it up in that.
Again, though, yeah, I'm pretty sure, but again, though, that's kind of going to be on you because the thing is you don't meet Yuffie. Yuffie was an optional character in the original game. This one, she's not optional. She's part of the story, but you don't meet her until a chunk of the way into the game at this point. So you will have already been managing your relationship meter with all the other characters before you even get to her. First of all. So second of all, you're going to have to go way out of your way
to really go for it.
So that's going to kind of be on you, I feel. If like, I don't think anyone's going to accidentally besides, I wonder if, and that's the thing I really wonder about. Is she going to steal your material? Because you kind of fucking hate that character in the original game because she steals your material.
Asshole. Yeah. So other questions that I have is, are you going to be able to date Vincent, and how many women are going to do that? Because
I mean, men.
Or how many men? Yeah, that's fair. It just seems unfair. Vincent is an unfair. Sid over there wanting to get some action.
I would love to go on a date with Sid personally to get the Cloud Sid thing going. Thing is, I still think it's weird how apparently they said Sid and Vincent are not playable in Rebirth. I'm like, why? I'm like, we gotta see this over the third game. Do you really? I mean, the thing is like Sid's not gonna. I mean, yeah, Sid will be much later in the game, but he's not the end of the game like Red 13 was. Like, it seems weird to me that these two are gonna be not playable in this one, and they're really gonna have to wait, another 4+ years for them to be playable in part 3.
Especially considering that Red 13 is playable in this one, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and
because he does all the climbing.
And, and Kit Chi or Kate Sith, however you pronounce it, and in Yuffie. Well, Yuffie was playable in Intergrade, so. But yeah,
I mean, the Chocobo racing is going to be very cool. A lot of the mini games look really cool. Does that mean you're not going to get the airship in this one? I guess
no, I don't
you're
think
in,
so. No, because
does-
they're ending before disc 2, so
yeah. So there's
or
going to be 4 games.
3.
So, but they did 2 games out of disc 1. They're going to do 1 game out of disc 2.
Yeah, but disc 2 and 3 are mostly junk data, anyways.
That upsets me.
Not really. I mean, does it though? I mean, I remember hearing about this back when you remember Angel Studios, right? Red Dead people.
Yeah.
How they originally wanted to port Final Fantasy VII to N64. But Square and Nintendo turned them down. Mostly Square because they were on some bad blood at the moment. So then they switched their attention to Resident Evil 2. And they said when they were looking at it, because they wanted to do, they pitched it, that they're like, we really think we could get it down to 1 cartridge on N64. And they're like, how? I'm like, because most of the data in disc 2 and 3 is junk data. Like it's basically the same data reused over and over. It's the FMVs. Like it's like there's not a lot of unique. There's very little unique data in disc 2 and 3 besides the FMV movie files. It's mostly that. And so they're like, honestly, they felt they could actually compress it down. And there's a weird world where maybe they got the go ahead to do that. And God, I would have loved to have seen what that would have looked like. It would have been compressed to fucking back. And even with RE2, the way they did it was they removed 1 frame out of every second of the FMV, so they were all running at 23 frames a second. So that was like, yeah, that's how we compressed and saved space.
I don't remember if I wonder if.
Plus, there's no voice acting in the original 7 as well. It's all just FMVs.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So
Also, is Cloud's voice actor different than remake from
I
remake
don't. No.
Rebirth?
I don't think so. I think he is pulling. He definitely sounds super different in the demo you get because he's doing his 16-year-old version.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause he sounds like real young.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, he's definitely like pulling like I'm young in that demo, in that whole chapter 1 demo.
right, okay. Uh, doesn't sound bad, but he just sounded like way younger than I guess I remembered or envisioned.
Mhm.
Um, also love that. Uh, Tifa again. Tifa looks so small compared to both set. Like when I was playing the demon, like she's like tiny when she's leading you through the mountains. It's like I don't remember. Like, isn't she much taller than this?
That's just the original game, I guess. In this one, we're really seeing like, okay, these are what the characters' heights are supposed to be, and it's not just sort of like the little chibi character models they had that are all roughly the same height in the original. But yeah, it is definitely something you kind of pick up on now, where it's like, oh yeah, she's significantly smaller than the other guys.
Also, next time I see you, I'm grabbing you the way Zagran grabs Cloud. I'm gonna grab your arm and then you got
The way
a
he,
good
like,
core. You gotta put on some mass.
you gotta put on
That's right.
look up.
Grab you by the ass and be like, you gotta get some ass in there.
It again, really, it's a really weird Agron, but it's also just kind of fun because you are noticing, and you'll see this too in the full game too. Is they have fun with it. There's actually fun moments with the characters.
Yeah, no,
There's good levity. It's not just serious all the time.
it's another contrast between Final Fantasy 16 and like I liked 16. I still like it, but it in hindsight, like it definitely feels more empty than this is gonna feel like. There's much
Yes.
less to do. Um, and I liked the music for 16 a lot, but hearing the music in this, I'm just like, oh yeah, there's a lot more character to the music
Mm-hmm.
in 7 than there was to 16. Who's
All of this is true, man.
yeah, it is weird. I was constantly sitting there thinking about like, oh, what would Alex say about this music? Trying to like learn something from him. Like I've now since started watching a lot of his YouTube videos and stuff here and there. in preparation for the kick-ass conversation hopefully we'll get to have.
Yeah, and then because then they said, "Oh, we're gonna have 400 tracks this game." I'm like, "Oh shit!"
I know. I was like, "You better get to work." he's doing funk remixes of different
It
songs. It's like,
it
yeah,
definitely felt like they looked at like what Xenoblade was doing, and they're like, "Hold my beer." Well, I mean, the 400 is also is remake plus rebirth.
yeah,
To be fair, and playing through the other chapters, there is they will bring a lot of music that was made for remake as is, put it in rebirth in key moments. So it's like 400 tracks up to this point, which is still an absolutely gobsmacking insane amount. Granted, I'm sure a lot of that is just sort of jingles or things that would barely qualify as a music track, because that anytime anyone says any number like that, I'm like, okay, well, about 30 of those are going to be jingles, but that's
right.
still at a ridiculous amount. Otherwise, it's still a holy dick ton of music in the game. And here's the thing, because this game doesn't skimp on the music, obviously. The world map is not the world map. Every region of the world, and even every segmented section of region of the world, will have different music themes. Like the first area will play like a version of the main theme of Final Fantasy, but there's a sort of deserty canyon area in the grasslands, kind of on the other, kind of like around Calm, like around the edges of it. Like if you wanted to try to walk back to Midgar, and it plays an instrumental version of the vocal theme for the credits from Remake in that section
Hell
of the
yeah.
world. And then it has that instrumental version of the theme of Remake, battle theme version of that when you get into a battle in that area of the world map. And then the swampland has a different theme when you're in the swamp. It's all foggy and the environment gets all like fucking gross and moist and
Like
you know
swamp.
and
Yeah.
swampy. And then that has its own thing. And then the Junin, you'll hear it when you get to that part of the demo. The Junin area outside of Junin Harbor has its own unique world map theme and battle theme for that part of the world. So they're not doing there's not a singular generic, this is the world map theme. It's like every single biome or mini biome of the world map will have its own theme and battle theme.
It sort of blows me away how they're putting an ungodly amount of effort into this. And
Mhm.
I'm really really happy about it, obviously. But like the original came out all as one package, and they're putting so much effort into parts of this where it's like it's going to be three parts. Do you think it like there was no way to do this all at once to release all this as a single game?
That's a good question, and I think the answer to that question is like maybe, but I think it's benefiting this way because what am I always talking about? Is the crisis of project management. I think they needed to make Remake to figure out how they're going to make this game play and then make the big world map. Because Remake was necessary for what do the characters look like? How do they sound? How does walking, interacting with the world, how does the
Yeah.
battles and the battle, and the big one is the battle system. How is the combat system going to work? How is the core functions of these games going to work? And so they built kind of a whole game around that. And it means Remake in hindsight is like this very guided cinematic corridor experience. But it figured so much stuff they needed to figure out for as just movement, interactivity, and combat that okay, we figured all of that out. That's all done. Everything's done. The art for it's done. We know what the look of this game is and the art style and the character models and the rigging and all that's figured out. Now all we got to do is now we just have to figure out how to put this in a large environment. And then that's what they've done now, is just now they made it one environment. And it kind of goes back into what the producer Katase recently said, where he says, "I don't think we won't be able to remake Final Fantasy VI like this game because it would take 20 years," which I think he's full of shit. He's the one who said, towns couldn't be made because of HD graphics. So, my personal opinion is he's full of shit. Like, you need a project manager to figure it out. But on the flip side, it's like you could straight up just take this game's combat system and just the engine in general for this, and then just modify it into the world and look of Final Fantasy VI, and it wouldn't take 20 years. It'd take like 6.
Yeah, well, it's
Mm.
crazy how long games take now.
Yeah, maybe even less if you had really good project management. If you really like mapped it out ahead of time and said, this is exactly how it's gonna break down. So
Speaking of the combat system, though, by the way, you said earlier that that's going to change in the main game. Like once you get
yeah, so they don't have synergy abilities in this demo, really. They kind of do, because
yeah, they
you
sort of
get it
do.
you get it with Cloud and Sephiroth when you're fighting like the Materia Keeper or whatever. But there's these wonderful moves now where like because there's a sphere grid that you don't have access to in the demo called the Folio system, and the sphere grid unlocks synergy moves. So if like you're kind of really particular about using a certain group of characters, like I like having a party with these two or those two or whatever,
Right.
you can build up these synergy moves, which you hotkey in, and they're great because they allow you to do special moves without using the AP bar. Because what happened in remake, you would run out of your AP bar. So you basically you couldn't do anything. You just had to like sort of stand and walk around and guard and wait for it to fill up.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
just
yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
so they didn't get rid of it. It still functions like that, but in the main game, you're going to have the ability to build up us through this thing, the folio system, the sphere grid. You unlock synergy moves. A good one example is Cloud and Tifa, right? There's this move where Cloud holds up out his sword like horizontal, and Tifa stands on top of it, and he launches her into the air. He throws her up into the air. You do this because flying enemies. So, and you'll see it in the Junin Harbor, assuming it's the exact same demo, where it's like, okay, there's these flying enemies. Um, if you're Cloud, what are you going to do? If you're Tifa, what are you going to do? If you're Red 13, what are you going to do? Right? It's like they're airborne enemies and they're way up. So it's like, okay, well, what do? I can't cast a spell because a spell requires me to fill up the AB meter. I can't do anything. Well, now you do these synergy moves where you just like throw Tifa up, like you just like shovel her up there. Boom, just throw her up there and she'll start hitting the damn thing. So you
Throw a
get
small woman at it.
yes, exactly. Just throw it. So they did these things to basically, I feel like in a way, fix the combat system where like you get into these moments where I'm out of it. I'm out of the AP bar. I can't do my abilities. I can't do my items. I can't do my spells. I think maybe you can do items. I don't know. You can't do anything. You're just basically sitting there waiting for it to fill back up. So now they're actually adding moves that you can kind of like you unlock them depending on who you like the most. And they say you can. They said in the state of play you could reset them, which I didn't know that. We're like, oh, if I spec'd into this thing,
Right.
I don't, I can respec. So that's thank God for that. However, the weirdest thing about the folio is you have to do it at a station. Like how they have those little vending machines with items,
Oh.
they're next to those vending machines in the world map. And I'm like, it's weird you have to go back and do it from a station. They don't let you just pause the game and respec anywhere.
So I know that the whole menu thing in the middle of a fight, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't bother me that much. But it does sort of bother me. Like stopping mid-fight to quickly go through your menus. There is a nostalgia boner for it.
Mhm.
You
It
know,
is weird, and you end up hitting I hit X you hit X a lot where it was like it's like
a
and
lot. Yeah.
you're like, you gotta train your brain to stop pressing X, you know? I feel you on that one.
But at the same time, like I don't know how they would adjust that, how they would change that to make it more like because I liked the combat in 16, but 16's combat is pretty two-dimensional in a way compared to what it looks like this is gonna be in
Even
terms of
even even when you have people fighting with you, it's still mostly a character action game with one person.
yeah.
That's kinda just the thing with 16. This one, like, the one thing you can at least there's hotkeys. You can hold down R1, and then your list of abilities is hotkeys. So you can hold on R1 and press, one of the face buttons to do an ability move,
Oh, right.
so
See, I didn't really do that much. I went through the menus with it in slow motion.
so you can hotkey moves. So
Okay.
if you don't want to use it, like other than items, like if you want to use abilities, and I think you can hotkey spells, like so you could just do that rather than having to constantly bring that up every time you want to do something like extra, like braver or cross slash or whatever. Hotkeys are fun. So that is sort of the saving grace of of this battle system. It's just like you got to stop pressing X, which I do a lot still.
I did it a lot today. Well, yesterday, I guess. Yeah.
And the weird thing is too is when you first play as Sephiroth, like you press R1 and he goes into a parry state where you have to press parry. It's in the whole rest of the game, you could just tap R1 to parry. But when you fight that very first thing outside the truck, it's Sephiroth's got like this mode on where he goes into like counter stance. It's when you're holding down R1. So it's not like one button to parry, it's one button and then another button to parry or counter. Super weird, and only seemed to really work on those big old frog things in front of the truck.
I don't think I even did that. I don't think I even tried to parry.
You don't even have to, because I mean it's Sephiroth. You can kind of press square a few times and they're dead. So
I still get a kick of how long his sword Masamune is. Like, it's ridiculously long.
One thing I feel they still don't really explain in this one, and there probably is no explanation for it other than he went crazy. Is I'm like, why did he go back to the village to burn it before going to unlock Genova?
Why does he specifically go to kill your mother?
Yeah, like
he just specifically is just like, fuck that lady in particular.
It's the whole thing is I'm like, okay, so the mansion. The original game and this game, when you leave the mansion, you turn left to go up the mountain, right to go to the village. He specifically goes to burn the village for no fucking reason, other than he's a bad guy, and then he walks up the mountain to go be reunited with Genova. I'm like, I thought he was just like, I'm going to see my mother. The whole thing is just like, I'm just going to go up the mountain. Like, I don't like. Why did he specifically go out of his way just to burn the shit out of the villagers?
Well, it is also like I wish this is just a writing nitpick at this point, but it's like I wish they would have hinted at him having a more cruel nature rather than just being like the perfect duty good guy until he breaks and suddenly he's like, I'm gonna murder women and children because that's what bad guys do. If in the beginning,
whole thing because they do the whole anime like I'll put my hand over my claw over my face and be like, am I a monster too? I am a monster. I should kill people. I'm like, really, dude? Like, I don't.
Yeah, you've spent your whole life defending and protecting, and now you're gonna be a dick.
I was created to be the perfect soldier by a mad scientist. Everything sucks. I'm gonna burn it all down.
And I'm gonna only have one wing.
Like I said, I've never been that on board with Sephiroth as a villain. I always thought he's kind of a weak villain. And in the original game, the funny thing about the original, when you really go back and play the original, you don't see Sephiroth very much. And when you do, it's mostly Genova playing a mind game on you. It's very rarely the actual Sephiroth. You actually do not see him or talk to him or fight the actual Sephiroth in the original game very much at all. It is mostly entirely Genova that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
So so there's that sort of like that weirdness. Now this game's obviously a little bit different. There's something else is going on here. But yeah, I like the flashback. I've still never really bought into the whole why Sephiroth became evil is kind of like some weak shit to me. It's always been weak shit. But he looks cool.
Like they could have explained it as like it turns out everybody in the village that was an adult like worked on the project and that's why the village is there, and it could have been like a shocking reveal. It would have been so much easier to just be like, he realized they're all
like they were all like working for Shinra and they knew the terrible things that were going on and they just sort of buried it with the town to keep it the town's dirty secret, and they didn't want to let anyone know, and they were just like perpetuating this lie that they were involved with human experimentation. And that's why that actually would have been something where it's kind of like, okay, this is still not okay, but
I see why he took the time.
Why he would take the time to burn everything down. So
the thing is it hit me at the right time as a kid. So I think Sephiroth is cool as hell. It's that anime bullshit, but he's still cool as hell.
Yeah.
But I do agree that like he has basically no real motivation for any of the stuff that he's doing. It's a cop out in a lot of anime too, where it's just like, and then he goes crazy and just became evil as hell. because he's crazy now.
Yeah, and it's
Oh,
like
okay.
Genova works almost better as a villain because what is Genova is this alien life form that crashed onto the planet, and all it is a giant parasite, and all
Yeah.
it wants to do is suck up the life force of the planet and then move on to next planet. That's all it's doing. That's all the nature of Genova, because it's just this weird alien cosmic thing that just wants to suck up energy.
Right, and I
Okay.
can't remember what it looks like in the original game.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of.
It's just like a
It looks like something out of the thing.
right.
I mean, there's not real. I mean, well, okay, well, there's not a lot of depth or motivation there. We're like, it doesn't need to be like
Well, it's a force of nature in that at that point. Like you don't
it's a
have to have
weird
a
it's a weird alien force of nature. Yeah, it just came in and it's just doing what it does, and that's kind of it. Like that's kind of the cold, uncaring nature of hell, nature of life
right.
in general. Like when you really sit down and think about it, all life exists because every single living organism exists by feeding off of another living organism in some way. Like maybe you could argue plants kind of don't, but it's like
Nah, lots of plants do.
a lot of plants do. Well, decomposition and mulch and soil is, everything exists by feeding on the thing of another. We either eat the plants, we eat the animals, who would in turn eat us if they could. It's just it's kind of like that's how life kind of is. Life is kind of like this weird, uncaring, you know, constant tug of war, eternal struggle to like eat other things to sustain life.
Damn right.
So I kind of wish they leaned a little harder into that. Where like maybe Sephiroth didn't go crazy. Maybe he just kind of was like, "This is just what nature is. We're just fighting nature here." And he's like, "I'm like, look, I'm the son. I'm a DNA spliced alien. I'm just gonna do what's in my nature, and that is to feed off of life force. So I'm not even gonna do it for the kicks. I'm just gonna do it because, hey, man, it's just how it's supposed to be, man."
It's fucking delicious. That's why I'm going to do it. So I realized I ate up a lot of the time talking about Final Fantasy, but I do want to talk about the EVO announcements for the remainder of the episode. Got like 15 minutes here. I made a tweet yesterday because the announcement, like they got rid of DBZ and put in Unnight.
Under Night Inverse 2. I don't even know how to pronounce the rest of that insanity. And that is in that's probably the most standout one where it's kind of like what? Well, and I think there's multiple reasons for this.
Yeah, well, and I got told some good
Well,
reasons.
it's just okay, so it's newer, yes. Sure, it's newer. Like that is true. However, when you're dealing with something like Dragon Ball, the thing is you kind of got to remember is that this gets really touchy with the subject of Toei Animation, who are extremely hands-on with everything. And this is an official event owned by Sony Corporation. So this is a Sony-owned, giant public legal, officially sponsored tournament. Namco, the games publisher, and Arxis, the games developer, are all in attendance. They're all part of this thing, and this is a Toei's brand and license for all intents and purposes. So they can get very hands-on with things. And if they're just kind of like, we don't want this for any reason, for whatever reason, it has to go. Now, I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying like you might have to go through 3 extra steps of approval process for a game like Dragon Ball Fighters to be like as a grand stage major shown title that you wouldn't have to for these other games. So let's just keep that in mind. Like I'm not saying that Toei doesn't want the game there. I'm just saying that like if you want to put this advertise EVO as a major event that will feature Dragon Ball Fighters as a featured title, there's probably an approval process there. And maybe they could have done it, but again, that's money. It's money and approval processes that may or may not have taken the extra time to do. And again, the game is old and it's probably not worth it. The other thing, and what probably feeds into why they decided and maybe we don't even want to even bother trying to get approval for this, is it's long. The matches are the longest of all the games. They had to drop it to top 6 last year, and it was still super long instead of top 8. And there's the whole aspect of like it's boring to watch, and I agree with that entirely. But I don't think Evo would ever publicly admit that like a game is boring to watch in grand final. Guilty Gear Strive was very quick, but also very boring to watch in grand finals because it was just swept by one singular player using one character doing the same thing over and over, and nobody could get around it. But like Dragon Ball is that, but very drawn out and like so. I don't think the fact that it's boring necessarily wasn't it, but the fact that it does take a lot of time, it eats up tons of the day, and then you have to go through extra steps of approval process. You probably have to pay. There's probably extra money involving Toei, and Shueisha. So all of it together is probably like this juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yeah,
to get Dragon Ball back because it's like we have to ask one teeny tiny little publisher like Bread or whatever, French Bread. Can we have Under Night In-Birth as a main stage game? Yeah. Okay, cool. Great. Done.
Yeah, I guess I don't know like the tournaments and stuff like that. In order to be official tournaments, they have to get permission to.
I think the fact that Sony's now involved, this is
Well,
a
and they
Sony-owned.
broadcast it, right? They broadcast.
Yeah.
I guess if it wasn't a broadcast tournament, it wouldn't necessarily be.
Well, I don't think ESPN covers it anymore. I think that's long gone.
Right, but they broadcast on Twitch or they broadcast.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So it's streamed. I guess. Yeah. Okay. It's not broadcast. It's streamed. But it is sort of interesting. And then I had the thought last night when replying to some people who actually very kindly educated me on why that decision might have been made. I was like, I guess this is the same argument that Melee players made. Like, oh, Melee's still really popular. Why would,
yeah,
blah, 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 replace it? But I do you think Sony is Sony moving in a better direction? Is Evo going in a better direction? Because there's other parts of the announcement where it's like, it sounds to me like it's going the right direction. It's making good decisions for the event overall.
For the most part, yes, because they're talking about, hey, they're going to make the museum bigger, they're going to make the arcade bigger, they're going to make
all 3 days.
They're going to make bring your own console bigger. They're going to open it. The third day will be open. The third day will not be a separate ticket. It'll all be one badge, gets you into everything. That comes with the new venue. I don't have any insight on this, but I imagine the reason why grand finals had to be a separate ticketed event is probably because of their old venue at Mandalay Bay. I'm speaking completely on guesswork here, but I'm like, the fact that they had it in their specific sports arena means they probably had to pay a whole giant extra fee to use that arena for that one day, and it costs so much that they needed to have a separate ticket, or that Mandalay Bay might have even required them to use a separate ticketing system to use their arena. I don't know. It's one of those two. So in a sense, it's actually a really good thing that they're changing venues because then they can put everything in one thing. Now, the Las Vegas Convention Center or the West Hall, obviously they're not going to have an arena, a giant stadium style thing there. They could probably try to build something like one up. I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to look. It's probably going to look a little different. Maybe won't look as crazy.
Yeah, it's not going to be as cool because the Las Vegas Convention Center sort of sucks.
It's a big warehouse.
Yeah, it's big, empty. There's some like hallways with hotel carpeting on it, but that's about it. Like there's so many better convention centers attached to hotels.
It honestly, like, okay, it doesn't feel as bad, but it almost feels like you're going into the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, that and like, there's nothing around the fucking convention center.
That's the other thing too, is that okay, there is a party pooper a little bit here, and you just said it, which was this is not on the strip, not really near the strip, and you sure as fuck don't want to be walking to the strip from the convention center in July.
Right.
You're kind of like on your own out there. It's kind of like over there on, like to the side of the strip in its own little kind of world. There's no real there's a couple of hotels around it, obviously, because it's a convention center, but like it's kind of in its own little subspace. if you will.
So you're gonna Uber or taxi or whatever to it from
You're
your
gonna
hotel.
Uber, a taxi, or you're gonna drive your own car, for some
Right.
people, and you're gonna have to pay the convention center parking. Granted, you had to pay for Mandalay Bay. I have no idea why Vegas is speed running itself to like make sure young people, millennials and younger, never want to come here by like charging for parking. Your greatest asset is now gone. I don't know, it's a whole rant for another time, but it is kind of like just out there. Like this is good for Uber, I guess, because it kind of the one nice thing about Mandalay Bay, and granted, it was sort of losing its luster really hard, especially after COVID, was that it was on the strip. It was on the end of the strip, but it was a hotel right there on the strip that was a hotel in the convention center was inside the hotel, and you had basically you could go into Evo and be between Mandalay Bay, Luxor, and Excalibur. You go to everything all those hotels had to offer and never walk outside once.
Yeah, and several different price points for those hotels.
Right.
Luxor was mid-tier, Excalibur was way cheaper, and then Mandalay was super expensive. You were not going to the rest of the strip though. It would have been a hell of a walk. Like Mandalay is pretty isolated by other standards.
Oh, I did it because they had that free tram from Mandalay to Excalibur, and then you walk over to New York, New York.
Yeah, you can, but it's still like it's pretty isolated comparative. Like if you were staying in New York, or the Paris, or what's the name of the place I really like? I'm blanking on
Bellagio or Caesars.
No, it's like the Venice or
Venetian.
Venetian, thank you.
Venetian's amazing.
Venetian's incredible, and the convention center is really great. And the main stage convention center, while not as cool as that Mandalay arena, is still very cool. Like it has a huge LED behind, like it's very cool. But that convention center is great and is attached to the hotel. And then there's like amazing restaurants, but also you walk right out and you're on the strip and like you're in the heart of the strip.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's
great.
Kind
of a bummer they didn't get the Venetian.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know how they would have. The Venetian's not a cheap
No, it's
place.
not cheap.
It's also got the best hotel rooms in my opinion. But
yeah, I've never stayed there, but I've looked at some pictures. I'm like, it does look like the
they're
best.
huge. They're like the size of my apartment when I was living in Koreatown. They're they're bigger. They're twice the size of that apartment. So they're like 800 square foot like rooms. Like you have like two levels and you have your own living room and shit. Like it's gorgeous. Yeah, no, and the food is so good. There's so many amazing food places.
That I can attest to because I've been to a couple restaurants in the Venetian, and that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying that out loud, and everyone's gonna go there.
No, everyone go there.
Everyone knows there already.
It's wonderful.
I feel everyone probably knows this if you know Vegas. But anyways, yeah. So Evo, there's a lot of good things going down with the convention itself. It is a bit of a party pooper because it is sort of like, well, it's way out over there now. So you're gonna be taxiing and Ubering or whatever out in and out of there. I know Kenny's said this. Oh, there's a place that's got a food court, and I'm like, cool. Like it's not the strip though.
Right. I mean, like I'm not gonna, especially for like younger people going, going to Vegas, especially if you can't gamble. Like food court's all you need. If you're not gambling, you're not drinking, you're probably not caring all that much about like the fancier, nicer restaurants.
When you remove gambling and alcohol from your budget, you'd be amazed at how much you can get, how much more your dollar can go in Vegas. Granted, inflation, everything's creeping up on that, but like when I was young, when I was first going to Vegas as a young pup, my dollar went very far in Vegas by not drinking and not gambling. So.
Right. Yeah, well, there was a time because my grandparents lived there, so I was there all the time. And there was a short period, like a window there just after I had turned 21 where they were still living out there. And so we were there all the time and we knew where all of the special deals were like which hotels where we're doing specials on, like big dinners and also drinks. And also like we could go and just like really go big for dirt cheap. Now I don't know any of that. I don't remember any of that stuff or know where.
I doubt it. I don't think anything cool. I don't think any good deal survived COVID.
which is unfortunate. Yeah, last thoughts on Evo for me really is like the last time Evo was at that convention center. It's sort of cool because I think that's the year that we did the Predator presentation for Assist Me. And so there's like nostalgia there, but it is also the ugliest convention. Like LA Convention Center's nice by comparison to the Vegas Convention Center by a lot.
It's definitely visually more appealing, and I don't even like. I mean, I don't like downtown LA, period. But the convention center looks like an airport in LA. But like, yeah, it visually definitely looks nicer.
Yeah.
Like Vegas looks like this. It's got this weird sort of like old 80s vibe, like 80s warehouse vibe, like to the aesthetic, especially some of like the inside when you're walking to stuff. Like it feels like it's been that way for like 30, 40 years.
Right.
You know, like it feels like it's sort of just been kind of like left to like
Rot.
rot.
A little bit.
I mean, it's not like rotted, but it is kind of
No.
like it's old. Like you get like just like this old person smell. Like walking.
Yeah, and it's also just like it looks like a warehouse. Like you're just
It looks like a warehouse. Like that's
that might be
let's
fine
face it,
for
like
it
it's a
though.
warehouse. I mean, again, that'll kind of be up to Evo to see how they dress it up and design around it. And most convention centers technically are just in a warehouse in some way or another.
No, that's
Again,
true. Yeah.
I think it is generally it is an upgrade across the board. Everything they announced. But there is a little bit of like, yeah, but you are kind of now out of the way of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the hotels aren't very happy about it. You know, like the hotels that like you're not going to be spending nearly as much time. Like if you're going for Evo, you're now going to spend most of your time away from the hotels and casinos and stuff.
The thing is I think the hotels around that convention center are just hotels. I don't think they have casinos. Maybe one of them does, but like of the 2 or 3 hotels closest to it, I think at least 2 of them are just a hotel.
Right.
So they probably don't care because they're just like, well, as long as you're paying for the room here, that's all we get anyways out of you. But yeah, there is a sort of like, well, and I don't know how much Mandalay cares. You know, I don't know how much crowd Evo brought to Mandalay's casino.
It was pretty good.
It's
I mean,
food court, sure, but it's casino probably. I don't know. Hard to say. I mean, and that's the other thing too. I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know when the last time you've been to Vegas was, but people don't gamble.
oh no, the last time I was there, people were gambling.
People was it pre or post COVID?
It was post COVID.
Post COVID. Okay,
I was there a year after COVID, and it was I was there for reInvent, and there were people gambling, but I was only in the Venetian, so I don't know if it's Venetian's a little bit upscale. So
I went twice last year, and both times I was kind of like, yeah, only the old people periodically, like very spread out, were gambling. Almost all the tables were empty most of the time.
I went
Like
for a bachelor party last
few.
year that
Eh,
everywhere was like jam packed and people were gambling.
really
Our age
interesting.
and younger, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, because it was just something I took notice of when I was there twice last year. I'm like, nobody my age or younger is gambling.
Well, I
It's
will say this. There are half the machines and like half the dealers on the floor at any given time than compared to when I was a kid
mhm,
and like going with my parents when we were there or with my grandparents and stuff. And me and Phil would
right.
be like in the arcade and you'd look out and like it'd be jam packed with people.
Mhm.
There's definitely much less gambling compared to our parents' generation for sure. I think
Okay.
we just haven't ever had the money to just like burn, you
We
know.
don't have disposable income the way mom and dad and grandma and grandpa did.
We did not, at least not yet. I'm hoping it's coming. We'll see. Any final thought on Evo
I
or
mean,
Final
you
Fantasy?
know what? I'm Evo War Final Fantasy. Yes. Evo Rebirth.
Evo
Final
Rebirth.
Evo Rebirth. I'm generally excited for the fact that it's bigger
Yeah.
and all open all through. The big thing for me was always like the third day should be open. I really wish the third day was open. that was my biggest, honest, like my biggest wish ever was that EVO would be open all 3 days, and it is. And the cherry on top was the fact that it's one badge covers all, one badge for everything, even better. So that is my one wish granted. It's sort of like, this is like really kind of like wishing for, this is like kind of like the greed in me was like, I wish it was at the Venetian, just to be
It'd
at
be
that
great.
hotel, to be at that part of the strip, to be near all those restaurants, to be so there is kind of like that aspect of it. But like, like it's kind of those things. It's like I'm actually kind of, when I go to EVO, when I'm not at EVO, I'm usually hanging out with Chaos, or shout out to you if you're listening to the podcast. I don't know if you do or not, but like we go and we just hit up restaurants.
Yeah.
Like but we go to like not the on the strip fancy ones. We go to the part of town or Vegas where all like the all the mom and pop Asian places are.
There's a
'Cause
lot of that. There's a
there's
couple of really good diners.
there's a part of Vegas that it's like a lot of like family run Asian,
Yeah.
different Asian countries. I'm not saying it as like Asia's one country. I'm saying multiple different. We're talking, you're talking Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. You're talking all kinds of different,
There's
delicacies.
incredible Chinese food in Vegas, like
Yes.
incredible. And I mean like high end too. Like there's really, really good cheap stuff, but then there's also really good high end Chinese food. There's really good Mexican food. There's
Oh yeah, there's good Mexican food.
There's really good Hawaiian barbecue spots because there's a huge population of Hawaiians in
The
Vegas.
Ninth Island.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's surprising how good the food scene is in Vegas. If you're a foodie and you want to live somewhere cheap, you could pull it off in Vegas.
Yeah.
But on that note, we do have patrons to thank. If you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/EVO podcast. Dude of the week was Queasy Jam. Speaking of food, delicious Queasy Jam.
Queasy Jam.
Our producers for this episode are Zybernite, Mutton Chops Johnson, The Pink Hammer, Scrunami, Karoy35, Hyper Viper 89, Hockey Kong 64, LCL Mayhem, and Ziggy Z. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.
Later, dudes.